tonight. Shifting focus now, the union government yesterday unveiled its plan to enact greater oversight over social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and also bring digital media and streaming platforms into a strict regulatory net. In a joint press conference, Union Ministers Ravi Shankar Prasad and Prakash Javadekar announced new rules and guidelines for social media and over-the-top OTT platforms in India to curb the quote-unquote misuse of these platforms, which will be implemented in 3 months' time, called the Information Technology Guidelines and Intermediaries and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. The changes may go down as the largest shake-up in the technology regulation space in nearly a decade. The new rules will require big social media companies to take down unlawful content within a specific time frame, 36 hours to be precise, of being served either a court order or a notice by an appropriate government agency. The rules also carve out a separate category for sexual content, under which an intermediary shall within 24 hours remove the offensive content. What does this mean? What does this mean? Is this a gag order? Is this a gag order, or was this necessary? To discuss the issue, I am being joined from Bangalore by Mr. Gaurav Kumar Das, data scientist. Welcome, Gaurav, to the show. From Shillong, I am being joined by Dr. Prasenjit Biswas of the NEHU. A very warm welcome to both of you gentlemen. Dr. Biswas, how do you look at it? How do you look at these new regulations of the centre?
India being a liberal democracy and an open society, we have to ensure that the Article 19 is not curbed by any means, and there is no chilling effect in the name of reasonable restrictions on free speech. Now, what is happening in these newfound rules is that it categorizes a host of offences. Offences like national security threat, libelous attack on somebody, pornography, and also invasion of another's privacy, and then insulting the neighborly state or the foreign state, etc. These offences are not well defined. They are rather left to the discretion and interpretation by the regulator. Now, regulator can discriminate between one kind of people and another kind of people, and we have seen people who propagated majoritarian violence on the distressed and minority and other weaker sections. Often they are given a clean sheet, while people who haven't done anything are put to harshest of punishment. So who will control the regulator? Who is going to regulate the regulator? On that, there should be some legal provision. Things are worked out and left to the interpretation of the regulator, but that kind of putting laws and rules into practice creates a one-sided bias and gives absolute power in the hands of the regulator. Therefore, I find that this is going to have a chilling effect on free expressions of people, because free expressions of people often can touch certain sensitive boundaries also. Whether these boundaries are permitted within reasonable restrictions or not has to be debated and adjudged. There is no scope of debating and adjudging. It is rather a black and white, either someone has committed an offense or not an offense. So therefore, it's very, very loaded. It required more discussion, maybe a parliamentary examination. And this is my initial comment. Nabarun, yeah.
Absolutely. Gaurav Kumar Das, who will regulate the regulator is the question the panelists here raised. But do you think it was also necessary to come up with something like this? It was mulled at least a couple of years back. Things were under process. And do you think there is also a legitimate ground for an announcement like this? Because we cannot deny that social media platforms have been big time misused in certain cases. What is your thought on this as a neutral observer?
Yes. Hi, Nabarun. Thank you so much for inviting your show. Can you hear me clearly? Nabarun, can you hear me? Okay, so what I do want to point out is that this issue sometimes would definitely raise a bone of contention, probably among a section of society, who would make this issue a debate on freedom of speech, right? one thing needs to be absolutely clear, that freedom of speech is not a God given right. It comes with certain responsibilities. We have been witnessing so many incidents of cyberbullying, indecent pictures, messages being shared in social media. We can take an example of Delhi Boys Locker Room, which happened, I think, last two, 1.5 years back. And we also know the psychological effect it has on the victims and the subjects. One may argue that these incidents are not platform driven but are character driven. But while I completely agree with that, I would also say that these characters also got a platform and liberty to do that without any guidelines. Social media is a very powerful tool, and without any guidelines, it can become a weapon in itself. Uh, it may not be always harmful to a major extent, but we have seen in many cases. We have recently seen YouTubers, people who have Instagram, people have using Instagram to communicate with the common masses and call themselves bloggers. And due to which a huge number of bloggers have evolved with a huge number of followers. These bloggers have become so important that companies have been using them for marketing their own products and services as well, and out of which these bloggers are earning a lot of money as well. But what happens when the influencer gives poor advice which turns itself to be insightful, or which can be harmful, either physical or physiologically or physically as well? My point is simply the fact that if traditional media outlets like television and radio have been licensed, have been regulated for decades, why don't social media platforms go through the same process? Right? It is as simple as that. And we have seen a lot of social media platforms like Twitter, like Facebook. Twitter follows a lot of double standards when it comes to dealing with such accounts which put up very harmful posts. So we can see that during President Trump's reign, they put down some of the they basically put down some of the posts which were spoken against him. Whereas in India, after repeated requests from the government, it did not pull down some of the posts which tried to incite violence during the farmers' protest. Right. So I would definitely say there will be some pros and cons, but the pros will far outweigh the cons of these regulations. I would definitely say India is a young
Pros.
country. And hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So
Yeah. So yeah, that
the
is
more
what
pros and
my
cons is
point
what
is.
you are trying to say. Dr. Biswas,
Yeah.
are you questioning the move because of the
Right.
timing? Because of the timing, we had the farmers' protest, we had the NTCE agitation before that. Are you questioning the move because of the timing? Is it also political? Are you saying it's also political in nature?
There is a politics of making this regulation, no doubt one can see that. And the consequence of such a politics is a chilling effect on the dissent and difference of opinion. Now, all that my other respected panelist has said, cases of libel, cases of pornography, invasion of violation, commission of a legal offense, etc., they require a certain kind of interpretation. Now, if the regulator is given a free hand to interpret all these kinds of things in the name of attributing an offense, in most cases it could have a chilling effect, end up by not allowing people to express their opinion and voices freely. And there could be a serious difference of perspective and opinion on determining who has insulted whom. In such a situation, the for framing of the rule is pretty one-sided, and therefore what I am saying is that these regulations have to meet the standards of free speech. For example, First Amendment to the US Constitution, which allows even libelous speech and critique of the government, and allows certain kind of dissent and difference, because we do not have that kind of a free speech protection regulation.
Yes,
So this
Gaurav
kind
Kumar
of a
Das, you want to make a
regulation to
point?
control social
Yeah,
media
Gaurav
and
Kumar Das,
OTT
come in.
I
must be
uh,
complemented by a free speech protection regulation. Yeah.
Yes, Gaurav.
So I think let us put out the facts on the table very clearly. Now I think there are three steps of this grievance redressal which Mr. Prakash has come up with. There is self-regulation by the publishers themselves, the platforms themselves. So which means that the users have to do validate their own accounts. There's a self-regulating body which is supposed to be, I think, hit by a Supreme Court, ex-retired Supreme Court judge. There's an oversight mechanism as well. There'll be particular officers being placed in companies which are people who are residents of India. So I think the regulatory body will take its own course of time to build a strong body as well. But what the point is very simple. This point drive is as simple as the fact that if television broadcast channels and radios can undergo the same regulation guidelines, why don't we have the same for social media platforms? Because well, for sure,
Well,
we know
that is
that
again
today nowadays.
debatable. That is again debatable
Yeah,
because social media, individual social media platforms again do not cater to a large numbers. But again, a lot of pros and
yeah.
cons there. Dr. Biswas, are you for a separate a select committee looking into the
Yes.
rules and a select committee which has members from all background looking into the rules and then maybe coming at a consensus
Yes.
and going ahead with something like this?
Yes, there should be an intense debate on these kind of regulations, because these regulations have a chilling effect on free speech. As a democracy, if we are constraining free speech, how are we going to be different from China or Russia is a major question. Are we going to follow liberal democratic understanding of free speech, which excludes hate speech and which excludes invasion of someone else's privacy, which also excludes racial and ethnic kind of hatred spread by free speech and commissioning of certain legal offences? Of course, this regulation excludes this category of offences from being treated as a sane or correct form of freedom of speech. But mere exclusion in terms of misuse does not establish what is positive content, what is positively acceptable as part of our freedom of speech. Freedom of speech and the
Absolutely,
protection of freedom of speech
that is
gets
something
weakened
which
by this set of regulations.
that is something which
and
may
the
have to
hierarchy
be
that is prescribed
that is something
of the
which may have to
regulatory
be
body,
looked
that is not
into.
going to help
I think
people who are accused of
I'm sorry, gentlemen.
violating any such norms.
I am absolutely running out of time. I wish we had more time on this, but I'm sure we'll have another occasion to discuss this. Thank you so much, Dr. Prasenjit Biswas. Thank you so much, Gaurav Kumar Das, for joining me on Bottom Line. That's a wrap of Bottom Line tonight.